Hey, and welcome to the Unorthodox Cooking Academy Podcast, episode 2. Community driven by flavor and passion and breaking kitchen rules, one meal at a time. Now, this morning I was going through my computer and just tidying things up, and I found something that I recorded over a year ago when I started this journey. I was in the process of finishing off the Unorthodox cookbook, and I hit a bit of a brick wall. I creatively burnt myself out because I pushed myself really hard to finish the recipe book, and I'd started creating something and trying to fit a lot of content into the recipe book itself. I have briefly mentioned my food brain, and what I was trying to do was kind of like trying to take this whole food brain and fit it into a few pages that went at the beginning of the book. And it really stretched my creative juices and my creative flow. And like I say, I had a bit of a brick wall, but I took some time out and I kind of like let myself refocus and came up with some other ways to finish off the recipe book that I didn't find so overwhelming. So I found this footage, and it's really interesting, and it was something that I really enjoyed recording because it was really helpful. So I'm going to include it here. You'll hear me talking about Gareth's kitchen and a vlogcast and all of that sort of stuff. But the content is there, and I don't want to record the video. So I thought for episode 2 that we would just share that from the archives. So I hope that you enjoy it, and I shall see you on the other side. Hello and welcome to Gareth's Kitchen, the cooking and eating revolution to transform you into the ultimate innovative, creative, unorthodox kitchen superstar. Now, as many of you know, I am in the process of finishing off my Unorthodox cookbook, and part of the project that I want to do with Gareth's Kitchen is I want to record more informative videos. I'm going to call them vlogcasts because I'm not 100% sure yet how to get them onto a podcast. But I want to start sharing more videos that gives you information, that gives you insights, that kind of like is just fun things to listen to. And this is officially my very first one. So welcome to Gareth's Kitchen, the vlogcast. And yeah, what I want to share with you today is yesterday I was listening to a podcast. It was called The Other 20%. And this podcast is all around mental health and things to do with mental health. And in this podcast, the guy that runs it was interviewing Heston Blumenthal. And Heston Blumenthal is kind of like one of my biggest cooking inspirations. I was recording another video not so long ago and my microphone died. So now I have this paranoia that my microphone is going to die and I'm going to have to record this again. But anyway, back to what I was talking about. This guy was talking to Heston Blumenthal, and Heston Blumenthal was sharing about his recent diagnosis with bipolar disorder. And it was really, really interesting and really, really insightful and really kind of like made me think and understand myself a little bit better. Now, for those of you that know me, you will know of my personal challenges. For those of you that don't know me, I live with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia and have done for most of my life. Thanks to some amazing doctors, some amazing psychologists, and a great therapist, I have learned to live with it, and it is under control, and I don't let it get the better of me. And I like to think that this has an influence on how I show up in my life, but also the things that kind of like happen in the kitchen that I can't quite explain, because I've never been able to explain how I learned to cook. I've never been able to explain why I cook a certain way. It's one of the reasons why I have created my food brain. And for me, that kind of like breaks down everything and is what makes the Unorthodox Cookbook the Unorthodox Cookbook, because I'm going to go through all these sections of the food brain and really, really help you. But yesterday, when I was listening to this podcast with Heston Blumenthal, they spoke about things, and it's not based on hard and fast research, but he said that 50% of the hospitality industry are neurodivergent. And that kind of like really made me think quite a lot. And it kind of like helped me to sit back and reflect and see that my personal mental health conditions had or have a really big influence in what I do in the kitchen. And they say that one of the best things that you can do work wise or therapy wise for those with neurodivergent conditions is cooking, because there's a framework and there's a structure and there is a system and there is a ritual. And when you have a brain that is all over the place all of the time, it really is important to find an element of framework, to find an element of structure, to find an element of ritual that you can implement into your life. Sometimes outside of the kitchen, I can find it really difficult to have that structure, to have that framework, because there's so many different outside influences. Even when I'm sitting here recording the videos for my cookbook, I get so easily distracted, and I will sit and think, oh, I need to do this. And it's like, even now, as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I need to stop this video because earlier on I put some laundry in the washing machine and it's probably finished. And now I need to come and hang it up and all that sort of stuff. But when I'm in the kitchen, I have this framework and I have this structure, and it really, really helps me, because what it does is it helps me to plan my time, because cooking is very time focused. If I'm making lunch, I know that it needs to be ready at 1 o'clock. So everything in my head is done from 1 o'clock backwards. I know how long it takes me to prepare things. I know how long it takes something to cook. And therefore, I have the structure or an anchor for my personal focus. And I found it really, really interesting when he said that, because what I've seen with my food brain is that without realizing it, I have this framework and I have this structure that I have subconsciously learned to adapt to. Another thing with cooking is that it engages all of your senses, and for me, it makes me more in tune with them. When I am outside in the real world, there are so many different senses and feelings going on that it distracts you, and that it is easier to move from one thing to another. You become, or I know that I am really, really sensitive to sounds and things going on outside me, and it really kind of like breaks me out of a routine. But when I'm in the kitchen, I have to be engaged. I am with all my senses, the monotonous sounds of something boiling or frying, or Jerome really doesn't like it, but I love it when the extractor fan is on, because it is this numbing, consistent sound that keeps me in the moment, and it's quite meditative because it helps drown out everything else that's going on in my brain, and it makes me more sensitive to my body. When I am more connected to my body and when I am more engaged with my senses, it's a lot easier to look at something and know what needs to be done. It's a lot easier to smell something and know what needs to be added to make it taste a certain way. Another thing that also gives me, from a brain point of view, a lot of comfort and a lot of peace in the kitchen is that in my kitchen, I know where everything is. I like to organize my kitchen in a certain way, so I know that my pots and pans are there. I know that my knives are there. I know that these ingredients are there. I know that those ingredients are there. I have my, what I like to call my chemistry kit, where everything is labeled. Those are all my herbs and spices, and they go in their little box. So it's almost like I can go with those basic things on autopilot and allow my senses to drive me in the other way. So because I don't have to think about where something is, I can just automatically go there. It helps me to be a lot more present. Cooking is kind of like very task oriented and very repetitive to bring you to the completion of something. And I know this kind of like sounds like a conflict, because a lot of times people with a neurodivergent brain find it they either find it very hard to focus on one thing, or they become so super focused on one thing that nothing else matters. But what I've found for me is that this kind of like the repetitive, the chopping, and the cooking and the stirring and the mixing, it forces me to be mindful and to have a rigid but flexible structure to follow, which isn't always present. And because I have that kind of like rigid and flexible structure, what that does is it helps me to think outside the box, and I'm not afraid to think outside the box. And that's kind of like the really plus side of being neurodivergent, is that you have these kind of like creative streaks where you're not afraid to try things, but you have to be very present with your senses. You have to trust yourself in order to not have that fear to try something. When I don't trust myself enough, or when I haven't put myself in a present frame of mind, I find it a lot harder to be creative. I find it a lot harder to think outside the box. So having that structure, having that framework really helps me to kind of like tap into my creativity and not have the fear of trying, because I don't have to think too much. I kind of like just have this bull in a china shop attitude where I go for it. And the freedom of being creative is so important to me. I know that creativity is one of my personal greatest forms of therapy, because I get to create my own way of doing things. I get to cook things the way that I want to cook things. A lot of people ask me, well, why don't you do a restaurant, or why don't you do more pop-ups? It's because I don't want to be confined by the rigidity and structure of doing the same thing over and over again. It's a reason why when I create the menus for the retreat, I give them kind of like a brief description, which allows me to be creative within that framework. And when you are in this highly creative frame of mind, you're able to do a few different things at the same time. So I know that when I'm cooking, I don't always cook one meal at the same time. I always cook 2 or 3 meals at the same time, so that I have that freedom within my structure to bounce around, but I'm still being creative, and I still have a goal, and I still have an outcome that I am focusing on. And it helps me kind of like to find ways to do things in the best and most efficient way. If you are on the outside looking in, for some people, I know that, when they have watched me cooking, when I'm doing the cookery demonstrations, it seems very chaotic and very all over the place. But for me, internally, there is a lot of structure to that, and I like to find efficient and quick ways to do things. So that structure and creativity is really important to me. And another thing that I have learned is that when it comes to having a brain that functions in a different kind of way, there is a big sense of achievement in ticking something off a list. There is a big sense of achievement in serving up a plate of people to food, serving up a plate of food to people. And that really kind of like puts everything into perspective. It's part of the reason why I wanted to put together this cookbook is because I wanted selfishly to have that sense of achievement for challenging myself to cook within my time period for 12 solid weeks, to cook something new each and every single day, to have that structure where I wrote things down, but also at the same time to have that freedom within that structure to be creative, to express myself in my own ways. And it was kind of like, listening to Heston Blumenthal yesterday talking about these things, talking about how he cooks in the kitchen, it kind of like made me realize that, yeah, maybe, my little food brain is really a plus of these conditions that I'm living with. So that's kind of like what I wanted to share with you today. Probably just the biggest waffling bullshit, but it made sense to me. I had structure and everything. But that was my first vlogcast. I will be doing more of these in the future. I hope that you found that interesting. If you have any questions or any things that you would like to know, or any topics that you would like me to record future vlogcasts on, please put them in the comments below. And as you will see, this is one of the first videos on my new YouTube channel. So please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, comment below, because social media and stuff. But yeah, I'm going to go now. I've recorded some videos this morning. I'm going to go and hang up my washing because it's finished in the washing machine. And then I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm sure I'll find something. So have a good day, and I'll see you in the next vlogcast. Bye bye.
So there you have it, cooking and the neurodivergent brain, and kind of like a few insights from me. Hope you found that helpful. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Post your comments down below, and please share this video along, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye bye.